Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast, where we support, inspire, and empower you 1 mile at a time.
I'm Tasha.
I'm Jennifer.
My name's Jennifer.
Real life stories from real people living this gloriously messy lifestyle.
Real unfiltered moments of the RV life.
The realities of getting and staying on the road.
It's all going to be right here.
Hey there.
Welcome.
Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast,
where every mile is a lesson and every stop is an adventure. You're listening to the Learn to RV podcast, the podcast that keeps you rolling and inspired.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Learn to RV podcast. Today we are going to talk about what's up with your RV, solar batteries and more with Chris Reed from Why Not RV. Chris, why don't you start out for a second and tell us a little bit about yourself? Are you a full-timer, part-timer, and maybe something a little bit of fun, like what is your favorite national park to visit?
Sure. I'll actually start in reverse. My all-time favorite national park has got to be the Grand Tetons. It's just an amazing piece
Beautiful.
of beauty that this great North America has. I mean, it's just incredible out there. There's definitely still a few parks I haven't been to yet, so I can't attest to, Glacier I haven't been to yet. I've heard it's beautiful.
Yes.
Yosemite, same thing. But I'll tell you, for now, Grand Tetons is definitely my favorite one. But I am not a full-timer. I would consider it part-time. So I use my RV in two methods at this point. In the summer, I take one of my either graduating cousin or nephew on a coming of age trip, basically right when they graduate high school.
Fun.
So I've been doing that for 3 years in a row now, and I still have like 5 or 6 more years ahead of like each year I got a nephew or a cousin graduating.
Oh, wow.
So I take them on a fun trip each summer, and they get to pick the destination. So that's been like the recreational use of it. And of course, it's a portable hotel room. So, I've used it for a weekend here or there on some small trips, just like anyone would. But then the big thing is I'm a catastrophe insurance adjuster as a profession. So I take it to the field with me. And so like last year, for example, I lived in it for 3 months while I was working. And so it's full time for 3 months, you know what I mean? But I'm working so much that it's really just a place to sleep and eat and work.
But it's nice that you have your own bed to sleep in every night, and you're not bouncing between hotel rooms that don't always have the best mattresses or other things.
The thing. I mean, all these other guys doing the same type of job. I mean, number one, they're spending, I don't know how much money on hotels, food, eating out all the time. I mean, it's crazy. But then, to have your own comfort of your own bed, your own space, your own stuff. I really, really enjoy it. So like I said, I use it as a tool for work more than anything.
But that's cool. I love hearing everybody's stories. And that's kind of the neat thing about this RV life is there are tons of different stories out there about how everybody uses their RV. There is no one correct way to use your RV. There's lots of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And what I'm using it for now is different than 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago when I first started RVing. Totally different.
Yeah, it can change and mold with you as your life changes and molds.
Absolutely.
So that's great. All right, well, let's talk about solar. So first, why don't you start with breaking down what's called the power trio? We've got solar, batteries, and inverters. How do those work together?
Sure. So the power trio, solar, batteries, inverters, it's the best way to think of it is, so solar is what is creating DC energy, right? So the solar itself is what's creating that DC energy. The batteries are nothing but a storage device. They're holding DC energy. Mm-hmm. And then your inverter is what then inverts DC energy into AC energy to give you regular power in your RV for your microwave, air conditioning, laptop chargers, etc. So you can complete the task with 2 out of the 3 items. You always need your batteries, obviously. And you need an inverter to create AC power, but you don't necessarily need solar. And if you don't have an inverter, that's okay too. Solar can still help your DC side of your RV. So
Right. And a lot of RVs these days are powered with so many 12-volt things like 12-volt refrigerators. I mean,
Exactly.
That wasn't a thing many years ago.
No.
And stuff like that too. What about things like, along those lines of the AC DC? I know a big topic for people, they travel with CPAPs.
Yes.
Is there any, short-term ways to get inverted power without installing a massive inverter in an RV for that one item that you might need that AC power. AC, maybe I'm saying it wrong. The power for your CPAP.
Right. No, 100%. So the short answer is yes. There's multiple different ways you can do something without like a permanent install. For someone that needs to run something just as simple as like a CPAP overnight for medical use, and like that's it. Just as simple as, I'm sure you've seen them in like a regular car or truck. They sell them at Love's gas station. A little small inverter that like plugs into a cigarette outlet. Right.
Yeah.
They have
Yep.
small inverters like that aren't a permanent install, but you might have like little jumper clip cables that you could clip onto your battery, have a little inverter that produces 200 or 300 watts, whatever is needed for your CPAP, and plug your
Yep.
CPAP in. So that's something that someone can do, relatively simple and extremely low cost, but definitely not seamless or pretty, really, but it's functional.
Right. It gets the job done, which is sometimes all people need.
Yes,
So
exactly.
let's jump over to batteries a second. Can there's that age-old question: do I go with AGM? Do I go with lithium? What is the difference between the two? The benefits, the pros, the cons. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Sure. So a few years ago, my answer would be totally different than it is today, just because the cost of lithium has come down so much. I mean, it's insane how much lithium has come down now. I mean, you can buy a 100 amp hour battery on Amazon for $180,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
an AGM battery. Now, a few years ago, you couldn't do that. Like the cheapest you could find something was $300 or $400 maybe.
Yep.
Whereas an AGM battery was 120 to 160 depending. But now that the cost is it's so close to being like the exact same as an AGM battery, just for like the standard specs, 12 volt, 100 amp hour lithium, 12 volt, 100 amp hour AGM, they're within a few dollars of each other. But the big thing is AGM batteries, number one, you can't use all of the power that's in them. You can only cycle them, depending on the brand and stuff like that, to 50% is really what you're supposed to do. Some of them say you can deep cycle them down to like 20%, but it gets real sketchy and you're going to shorten the lifespan of that battery.
Right.
AGM batteries serve a purpose. And it's just at this point, where we're at now in 2025 and moving forward, it's no longer in house batteries for an RV. It's still in for chassis batteries and for your car or truck starting battery. That's where an AGM battery is supposed to live, because while, like, for example, a lithium battery, 99% of the time, very typical, they have a BMS built into them, which is a battery management system. And
Yep.
those have an amp hour or an amperage rating. Typically, it's pretty low, like say 100 amps. Well, one battery at 100 amps, like in a car, it wouldn't be enough to start the engine. Like the starter for the motor is way more than 100 amps. It's, 6, 7, 800 amps at cranking. So that's where an AGM battery, which they're rated, 800 cranking amps, they can produce a crap ton of amperage instantaneously, and then you can then recharge it with a crap ton of amperage instantaneously, whereas lithium is not meant to do that. It would destroy a lithium battery in a very short amount of time. So, but lithium is great for that solar or DC to DC charging, or just recharging off your converter, storing a crap ton of energy. You can use 100% of the battery all the way down to zero, and they're way lighter weight. And
Yeah.
again, now the price has come down to where they're at. There's no more should I get an AGM battery. If you're looking to replace your batteries, you should get lithium 100%. They're so cheap.
I definitely agree with that. We have lithiums in ours. We've had lithiums for a few years. In fact, we took them out of our motorhome and brought them with us to our fifth wheel when we changed a couple of years
Absolutely,
ago.
yeah.
Because there's no way I was leaving those behind. On the lithium battery front, you keep talking about like 100 amp hours. I know that there are batteries out there with more amp hours. Like, what is the benefit of a lower amp hour versus a higher amp hour battery? Is it better to do 4 100 amp hour batteries or one 400 amp hour battery, for example? I mean, can you talk into that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. So there's going to be a few factors with that. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, because if you have a super small footprint of where you can put a battery, but you know that, say, a 350 or 400 amp hour battery could fit there, one of them, but you couldn't fit 4 100 amp hour batteries because of the footprint, then, there's that answer. But
Right.
at the same time, like I said, like a typical lithium batteries are going to have a BMS system in them, and that limits you to a certain amperage. So let's say your 100 amp hour batteries, 4 individual batteries that all have a 100 amp hour BMS built into them. Well, if those are all wired in parallel, which we might talk about later, now you actually have 400 amps available to pull. Whereas if you bought a single 400 amp hour battery that still only has a 100 amp BMS, even though you have the same capacity, your BMS is still only rated for 100 amps. So you might not be able to pull the capacity that you're wanting, like for air conditioning or something like that, depending on your need of what you're using it for. You have to keep that kind of thing in mind of what amperage am I using to know, okay, 2 batteries in parallel is going to be better because now my BMS, the amperage is split into 2 versus just
Right.
1.
Right. So let's talk about that real quick. Series versus parallel. What
Absolutely.
is the difference there?
Yeah. So series is going to increase voltage and maintain amperage. Okay. So basically, when you do series, you're taking positive and a negative on one battery, and you're connecting it then to the next positive and negative. So it goes positive, negative, then you connect this negative to the next battery's positive. And then, so now essentially what you've created is you have your original positive, you have the negative positive tied together, and then you have a new negative. And if you test that positive here and the negative here, you now have twice the amount of voltage. So if those are two 12-volt batteries, for example, now you have a 24-volt battery. Well,
Right.
but the amp hours doesn't change. So you still have 24 volts at 100 amp hours, which we can talk about that type of stuff too. But so that's what a series connection does. Is it increases your voltage, but maintains your amperage. You're
And what
mainly going to,
what would be the benefit of increasing your voltage?
yeah. So you're mainly going to use a series connection when you're talking about solar.
Okay.
Unless you're building out a really crazy off-grid system and you're wanting to do a 24 volt or even a 48 volt battery system in your RV, you're like most RVers, I'm going to say 99% probably are going to stick with 12 volt batteries. So you're not going to do anything different because inverters are 12 volt. Your original converters built for 12 volt. All your battery or your lights are 12 volt. So you're not going to want to change that. However, up on the roof doing solar, if you have say 2 solar panels that are, call them 12 volt solar panels. They're not really 12 volt, but let's just, for instance, say they're 12 volt panels and they're 5 amps each. Well, you have 2 of them together in parallel, you would have 12 volts at 10 amp hours, meaning the positives and the negatives are tied together. That's parallel. But if you tied them in series, you would now have 24 volts still at 5 amp hours. So what that will equate to down the road with like a bigger setup is you're going to have a lower amount of amperage, so you can use a smaller gauge wire to carry that voltage over a longer distance, which can save a lot of weight and save a lot of cost because, as you know, copper and wire is expensive. And when you get into something that's rated for 80 amps, and you're dealing with a 0-aught or double-aught cable that's as big as my thumb, it gets really heavy and really expensive, and it's hard to manipulate. Whereas if you can keep a wire that's smaller up on your roof for those solar and to travel down, the smaller that wire can be, the lighter it is, the easier it is to manage, everything like that. And so that's where you want to do a series connection with your solar panels.
Okay. That makes sense. So let's talk about this, because I know a lot of RVers will go, well, I never boondock. I don't think solar's for me. Is solar for every RVer or is it only for boondockers? What would you say to that?
I would say that some form of solar is for everybody. Meaning like 100 amps, or 100 watts. I think almost every RV should have like at least a small little 100 watt panel. And the reason I say that is because if you're a boondocker, of course, yes, you want to go crazy with solar. You want to do as much as you can off grid, all that fun stuff. But for typical RVers that go campsite to campsite, their house straight to a campsite, they don't ever think about keeping the battery topped off. Most people don't really need it, but that one panel while you're driving down the road, for example, while your RV is sitting in storage, that one panel can just maintain your battery for you when you have nothing of a load. And it's just better for battery health long term, because as you know, if you deep cycle batteries over and over again, or again, if you have an RV in storage, for example, and the battery goes dead because you did disconnect it or whatever the case is, and now you get there, now you're dealing with a dead battery and all that fun stuff. It's a pain in the butt. But versus if you
Ruins your
had,
vacation real quick.
yeah, exactly. But if you had a 100 watt panel on there just to maintain your battery, that's right there to me why I think every RV, and I think pretty much at this point every RV off the showroom floors are coming with a small amount of solar. And it's for that reason right there. Most people think, oh, I have solar, I can go off grid. It's like, no.
No.
Slow down. Yeah.
No, they cover the basics. And I'll say, another benefit, at least we have discovered, we have around 900 watts of solar on our RV. So it's not a ton, but it gets the job done for us. It's a healthy amount. But what we have found actually is if we go and we are paying a monthly rate somewhere and then you're paying for electricity, well, we have it set up to where it can use our batteries and solar first and then the pedestal second. And so then we're saving a little bit of money and not having to pay as much electricity. Last year, we did this for a month and the friends camped next to us, their electric bill was almost triple what ours was.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And that's, just another secret benefit that a lot of people don't think about to do either. So
yeah, 100%. And that's saying it's dependent on what you're doing. Because I had a friend reach out to me, this is probably 2 or 3 years ago now, of a similar situation where he is full-time at a campsite all year round and wanted to offset his electric costs. And I was telling him about what he could do with solar and how he can prefer to use the solar over the electric pedestal and how it could save money. And so it depends on what you're doing. Yes, that is another great tool to use solar for.
Yeah. All right, let's go jump back to the inverters again here for a minute. So pure sine wave is a term that likes to get tossed around out there. What is a pure sine wave inverter compared to other inverters, and is it necessary?
Right. So there's 2 types of inverters. You have a pure sine wave and you have a modified sine wave. So a pure sine wave inverter recreates energy that is the same as what's in your house. So a waveform goes like this, smooth up and down, up and down. That's a pure sine wave inverter. A modified sine wave goes like this, up, over, down, up. And so it's very boxy and choppy. So the only time you would do a modified sine wave inverter in an RV is if you're only going to use it for resistive style loads, such as like a toaster oven, an electric heater, or like a tea kettle, a few things like that. But otherwise, the majority of like electronics nowadays, there's a few out there that could accept a modified sine wave. And if your charger says that it could accept a modified sine wave, that's fine. But majority of electronics out there need a pure sine wave inverter. All motors need pure sine wave inverters. So if you are looking to run your microwave, run your air conditioning, you have to use a pure sine wave inverter. It will not run off of a modified sine wave. And if it does run, it's not going to be for long. It's not
Right.
healthy for those motors to try and run off a modified sine wave.
Right, for sure. All right, so now let's jump over to the whole budget factor. Somebody wants solar, they want, the power, everything, but they're on a budget. So what comes first, the solar or the batteries? This has been an age-old conversation between my husband and I, when we talk about expanding, like, what do we do first? What do you say should be done first?
Well, so like all things, it is dependent on what you need. For someone that's parked at an RV campground all year round, and they're wanting solar to offset their electric cost, then the batteries aren't really doing much for them. So you want to put all your money into solar. However, that's a very small percentage of people that are doing that.
Right.
Me, my answer, anytime someone asks me this kind of question, is batteries all day long. You want to have as large of a capacity of DC energy as you can to be able to off grid, to expand solar down the road, to use that energy, because the solar, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but the battery bank is so vital to how long you can run things. Like if you have all the solar in the world, that's great. But then at nighttime, if you don't have a big enough battery bank to make it through the night, then what does it matter?
True.
So I always say you have to start with the battery bank. And like my Airstream, for example, right now, I put a massive battery bank in it. I haven't even touched the solar yet. I plan on doing it this winter. but I've had it for 2 years now, and it only has 400 watts of solar on it.
Yeah.
It's not much, but
No.
my battery bank is huge, so I can run overnight air conditioning, all my stuff, no problem. In the morning, solar starts to trickle a little bit, but if it's a travel day, now my DC to DC charger recharges the battery bank. And if
Right.
that's not enough, my generator recharges the battery bank. So
Right.
that battery bank is what, to me, is what's the most vital part of an off-grid setup, is that capacity of DC energy.
Right. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I've got solar. I don't need a generator. Would you say that that's true? Is there ever a situation where someone has enough solar and batteries that they don't need to think about a generator at all?
Absolutely not. You will always need a generator unless you just want to, risk it all.
Right.
So if you look through my channel, I did, at the time, it was the largest solar on an RV project that had been done at the time to a fixed system. So
Yeah.
I had over 5,000 watts of solar on a Keystone, Montana that I built.
Wow.
And it was the entire roof. It's beautiful. And it's still out on the road now. Someone else bought it. But it had dual inverters, big, huge battery bank, a mini split air conditioner on it, all this stuff. And I still put an onboard generator on that because we used that RV and we lived in it for a year. So I had a whole year of experience where we went to Colorado in the winter, where we were up in Michigan in the summer and down in Florida in the summer. And we use that in multiple different scenarios.
Weather,
and
everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And the solar was great. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. It did a whole lot of work, but that generator still needed to run every once in a while. A couple gloomy days, 5,000 watts of solar is not doing much when there's cloud coverage. And if you're running you're running everything in your coach, it's going to drain out. So like I said, if you wanted to not have a generator and just, it's gloomy, so I'm not going to do anything, open the windows, not run AC, it's possible, but at some point you're going to need a secondary source of recharging those batteries. Like I said, a DC to DC charger is a great source, which basically your truck is a generator. That's all that's doing, is making your truck a generator. So a generator, in my opinion, is always a need.
A must, yeah. Let's talk about solar for a minute. We keep throwing out terms like 100 watts and 400 watts and 500 watts. Well, how does that translate into power? I mean, because you've got watts up on the solar, you've got amps down in the batteries, you've got sunshine all day. Like, how does all of that work together and help each other out? Yeah,
so I wish the entire industry, and not just the RV industry, it would have to be everyone from residential and commercial to anyone who deals with solar and stuff. I wish we could all just say everything in watts, because it would make things so much more simple to understand. Like a 100 amp hour battery, well, at 12 volts is actually, 12 times, it's 120 or a 1200 watt hours. So it's like 100 amp hour battery is actually 1200 watt hours. So if we could just all agree to call everything watts, it would be so much easier to understand for most people.
Yes.
But that's not the case. So I mean, solar panels are typically rated in watts just because that's like the easy to understand how many watts that they can produce in an hour. But on the back, it's rated on its voltage and amperage. It has what is actually rated for. And then you have a solar charge controller that turns that higher voltage into the appropriate voltage to recharge your battery, which then again, your batteries, you could call them watt hours, but really they're rated in amp hours. And so you got 2 or 3 amps trickling in to your 100 amp hour battery. And so it's going to take you, X amount of hours to recharge a battery. So yeah, like I said, I wish we could just all talk about watt hours instead of watts versus amps. Versus volt and voltage. But the easy way to know it, if you don't already know, it's called Watt's law, is watts equals amps times volts. So if you know your amperage and you know your voltage, you know your wattage. If you know your wattage and you know your amperage, you can figure out your voltage. And so if you know 2 of the 3 things, you can figure out the third thing.
All right, so let's talk about that a second. So if you got a 12 volt battery and it's 100 amp hours, you've got 1200 watts, right?
1200 watts.
And then if you have a 100 watt solar panel, let's say, and it's full sun, how many hours would it take to charge up that 1200 watt battery, would that be 12 hours?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if it was producing 100 watts consistently for 12 hours straight, then that's what it would take. Yep.
And most solar does not actually produce its full wattage of hours, right? Is that correct? Like if you could have 800 watts of solar, and more than likely you're going to be collecting between 600 and 700 watts of solar, at any given time versus the full 800 watts. Would you say that's fair, or?
So yes and no. So I'll say yes, the general statement is fair, but technically solar panels are underrated. So a 100 watt solar panel can actually produce probably 110 to 120 watts.
Okay.
But that is in the perfect ideal condition, June 22nd, and it is angled perfectly.
The sun's right above. Yeah,
exactly. And I know that because, like I said, when I had my Montana that had, I think it was 5230, or I knew the exact amount of wattage, right? It says 5,200 watts. Well, there was days I was pulling 54, 55, 5,600 watts of solar through that system. And it was because it was such a massive system that the angle didn't need to be perfect. But if you have a tiltable solar panel, you're going to get a lot more wattage out of it, especially off midsummer. Midsummer, flat mounted solar panels on RVs, you're going to do pretty good midday, all that fun stuff. But once you're out of midsummer, if you don't have some form of tilt capability, yes, your 100 watt panel is only going to produce 80 watts, 70 watts, 60 watts. And then dead of winter, it's going to produce like 40 or 50 watts if you're lucky. And it's just because of the angle. The angle of the sun is coming in like this, and it's just barely hitting it. If you could tilt that panel and it was hitting it right dead on, you would still be able to get 100 watts in the dead of winter.
RV Roofing Solutions is a nationwide RV roofing company with mobile installers.
One of the biggest factors and benefits of the RV Roofing Solutions system is our product is a low VOC, which is helpful for those who are sensitive to chemicals. It's better for the environment, and it actually works better for the RV roofing industry.
It's a great place to find a quality product.
www.rvroofingsolutions.com.
On that note, I want to ask, suitcase solar is a big thing. If people can are on a budget, would you recommend suitcase solar at all? I mean, because with that, you have the ability to move it and point it towards the sun so you can collect a little bit better. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, again, so 100%, it's a preferential thing of how you use it. I think with my system that I'm going to do, I've never done a suitcase solar setup in the past, but I think I'm going to do one now because the Airstream roof doesn't have a ton of space. It has a decent amount. I think I can get 14 or 1,600 watts up there, maybe at best 2,000. But if I have an extra suitcase setup for, say, another 400 watt setup, two 200 watt panels, and then I can deploy that at any time in a parking lot, angle it properly. It's definitely a large benefit to your solar setup to have a suitcase setup. There's, of course, a lot of cons to them, though. Number one of which is theft. I mean, they're too easy for someone to just come and pick up and take. So it just depends on what you're doing. If you're in a Cracker Barrel parking lot, you might not want to set up your suitcase solar. But, if you're way out in the middle of the desert on like BLM land and no one else is around and you have cameras on your RV and
it's fairly safe,
you're set up for 2 weeks, you're probably going to be okay. So it just depends. But like for my conditions where I go to a catastrophe area and I'm in my RV, it's like if I can get somewhere, park it, and then deploy some extra solar to keep myself off grid longer, I'm absolutely going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to talk about some common myths about solar. And so I'm going to pose a statement to you, and I want you to see if you can debunk the statement, okay? So the first one I have here is, I have solar, and I can run everything in my RV.
That might be true. I can run everything in my RV, but you are limited to a time frame. So no matter how much solar you have, depends on your battery bank of how long you can run those things. Now, yes, if you have, let's take a crazy example, 5,000 watts of solar, and in midday, the best that you're using is 3,000 watts, well, you're still overproducing 2,000 watts. So, I can run everything all day long, which is true. It's true. On a bright, sunny day, you can run everything and recharge your batteries. And let's say at night, you have 100% batteries. Well, is your battery bank big enough to make it through the night? I hope so, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where that's going to come into play, is like, is your battery bank really what can run everything all the time?
Yep.
The solar is only used during the day on good days to recharge and to run those items.
Yeah, for sure. But most RVs, let's just be clear, most RVs do not have that solar setup to
No,
be able to
nope.
run everything.
Yeah,
People like to think they can buy it off the lot and, oh, I can, go and run my AC. No, probably not.
Yeah, the salesman, if they, I can't even. But whatever it is that those human beings may or may not have told you, it is probably not 100% accurate. I'll be as politically correct as possible.
Right.
If you got a decent, let's say 800 watts of solar, and they're like, it's an off-grid package ready to go, you can run everything. Again, that might be true. You could run your air conditioning, but your AC pulls like 1200 to 1600 watts. So if you're producing 800 and you're pulling 12 or 16, that's a limited time before your batteries are going to die. So you have to have a battery monitor. That is the biggest key to a solar setup. At any kind of off-grid inverter solar, you have to have a battery monitor. It's the only way to know how much time you got left, and
Right.
then you can manage your power appropriately. Say, okay, well, it's only noon, and our batteries are down to 30%. I want the batteries recharged to 100% before bedtime. So I'm going to run the generator for a few hours, But if you don't know that information and you're just kind of guessing, then before you know it, it's 9 p.m. and it's quiet hours. You're not supposed to run your generator. And now your solar's definitely not doing anything. And your battery bank is dead because it didn't recharge enough during the day. And now you're screwed overnight. So
Yeah, exactly. The next one, the more solar panels I have means I have unlimited power.
false. Again, you have more power, and again, the easiest way to think about solar power is it is just producing energy during the day when you have the solar available to recharge your battery bank. Your battery bank is what is giving the power to everyone else. Right now, yes, midday solar's running, the power is going through the DC system, and it's technically drawing directly from that. But if you just think of it as my solar is there to recharge my battery bank is there to give power to everything else, that is how you can figure out how much solar you really need. How much more solar do I need to recharge my battery bank efficiently, so that I can run everything all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And another one is RV solar systems are plug and play.
There are a few systems out there nowadays that are more plug and play than not, but no, I mean, if you have a permanent setup that you're wanting, it needs to be installed. I use the word professionally, but you can be a professional just
Right.
as I can be a professional. There's tons of information online. It's not rocket science. It's really very basic stuff. Red wire, black wire. It's not that difficult. But when you do plug everything in, you got your solar panels plugged into the solar charge controller, your solar charge controller wired up to your batteries. You still have to then program that solar charge controller to the appropriate voltage for your battery bank. And that's where
Right.
it's like, it's not really plug and play, because you want to make sure that stuff is all optimized properly. Otherwise you can damage your batteries.
Right. And there's a lot of RVs out there that, I've seen it, the new RVs. Oh, this RV solar ready. All you have to do is plug it in and go. I mean, how accurate are those statements?
Right. So there's some out there that have like this Zamp solar, solar ready, where you can plug in a suitcase style thing. And again, all that is a wire that runs directly to your batteries. It doesn't, depending on the RV, of course. It
Right.
usually doesn't have a solar charge controller built into it. So what you plug into it has to already be programmed for your batteries. So if you have a solar deployable setup that has a little solar charge controller built on the back of it or something, you have to make sure that's programmed appropriately for your lithium batteries or your AGM batteries or lead acid, whatever it is that you have.
Right.
And even within lithium, like, every manufacturer recommends different things for their batteries. And then from there, what you might prefer out of your lithium batteries, say you want to have them last you 12 years, but only use 80% capacity, versus I want them to last 8 years and use 100% capacity. The way you charge
Right.
those two different banks is different. So you still have to do some form of minor programming and stuff. You don't just want to just plug it right in.
Right. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I would say the only
Okay.
thing that's out there that's like a direct plug-in unit are those like the EcoFlow, and I think Delta makes those solar generators that are essentially just a battery bank with an inverter built into them, and you can plug a solar suitcase into it all by itself, and you just plug your power into it, just like you're plugging into shore power. That's about the only thing that's like a plug and play, because it's already like all pre-programmed for their system. That's
Right.
portable, and then you just plug your RV in as if it's a generator.
Okay. And then the last phrase is solar is too expensive for the average RVer. What would you say to that?
Well, like all things, it's all situational. What's expensive to me is different than what's expensive to you. And so solar is pricey, but gosh, it's getting a lot cheaper every single day. I mean, panels are getting cheaper. You're 50 cents a watt, pretty typical. If you're paying $1 a watt, that's a few-year-old pricing. Like, and even that's pretty cheap. 800 watts of solar for $800. That's not, and that's just the panels. Of course, you still have cable and the install and mounting hardware and stuff like that. But and then batteries. The big cost years ago was batteries. Now they're getting way, way, way cheaper. But they can also still stay really expensive if you buy certain name brands that are they're expensive for their own reasons. Whether that's an amazing product warranty, better build quality, built in America, whatever the case is, you can still spend a lot of money. But with today's world of what we have available on Amazon, you don't need to spend a lot of money. You can save a lot of money and still have a really great solar setup. So it's definitely available I would say it's available for everyone. It's just a matter of how much can you do and when can you do it.
Well, and maybe you may not agree with what we did, but I'll tell you our story of how we managed to score lithium batteries is we actually bought ours off of eBay. It was an electric vehicle that they came out of, and the electric vehicle had gotten into an accident and, maybe had a couple of cycles on it. So they were practically new batteries, but we got them for a fraction of the cost is what they were going in the real market. And, that's how we managed to save money and get lithium batteries in our RV. So,
yeah, I've seen a few people do that. I wouldn't disagree with it whatsoever.
Yeah. All right, let's have a little bit of fun now. All right, Chris, tell me if you could build your dream off-grid power system from scratch, and I want you to talk about it in relationship to your Airstream right now too, not the one that you talked about earlier, the Montana, but in relationship to your Airstream. What would that dream off-grid power system look like, and what all would it include?
Yeah, so I'm getting close to the dream with the Airstream. So the biggest holdback on the Airstream is roof space. With my previous build, I built a raised roof rack to fit as much solar as I possibly could, and it was great and it worked. It's whatever, but longevity, maintenance on everything else on the roof, it's not really that practical. So the dream is to fit as much solar on the roof as you possibly can. I want 2,000 watts at least up there. I don't know if it can fit up there without like covering other things, covering my skylight, for example, and I don't really want to do that. So that's the solar side is for the Airstream, 2,000 watts, 2,500. That'd be all I need. Inverter. I currently have a multi-plus, 3,000 watt multi-plus, and it's great. It does everything I need for what I have. But the dream would be to switch it to a Quattro inverter and do a probably a 24 volt system in the Airstream instead of a 12 volt system. And that the reason that Quattro is so much better is, again, I have an onboard generator. So the Quattro can recognize two different AC inputs. So it can recognize shore power and generator, versus right now what I have in the Airstream is a automatic transfer switch before the multi-plus. So it automatically gives the multi-plus either shore power or generator, but it doesn't know what it's getting. It doesn't know if it's getting it from the generator or getting it from shore power. Whereas the Quattro, you can program it. Hey, when I'm on generator, I only want you to pull 30 amps, but when I'm on shore power, I want you to pull 50 amps. So it's more programmable. It's a better system. And So that'd be the dream there. And then my battery bank is already the dream. It is
Okay.
outstanding. I can run air conditioning literally for 24 hours straight with no solar, no nothing,
Yep.
which is a pretty, like 24 hours straight of air conditioning is insane. And
It
we're
is.
talking like Florida heat, like nonstop running. I'm not talking
Right.
cycling on and off, like nonstop. It can run for 24 hours. So in regular conditions, it can run for 3, 4, 5 days. So any normal weekend that I do, the Airstream is amazing. Like I can just go down. Actually, 2 weekends ago, I did a barbecue competition, and I used the Airstream as my little home base setup, and it was great because that battery bank is big enough it ran my grill overnight, ran air conditioning inside the RV, both air conditioners, did everything, and then in the morning we were at like 60% battery because we're in Southwest Virginia. It wasn't crazy hot, but the RV was a lot cooler than it was outside,
Yeah,
So.
for
But yeah, so
sure.
I'd say that's the dream right now.
So what would you say, like, let's say that there's someone out there, they want to do solar, but they're not necessarily handy. What would you recommend to them on trying to get their solar done? Like, are there people out there? Is there resources they could go to? I mean, I know there's YouTube videos everywhere, but maybe they just want to talk to someone and go through their needs and make sure that they're on the right track or whatever. Like, what would you tell someone?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several people out there that offer consulting services. Like I offer consulting services for RV solar. So if you just want to ask questions and figure out what you want to do, like I offer a service like that. And I know that there's several other people out there that do the same thing. Full-time RVers that travel around. So
Yep.
just look around, post to a couple of Facebook groups maybe, and say, hey, who's in the New Mexico area who does mobile RV solar installs, and there's probably a full-time RV person that has the experience and that does mobile installs. And you
Yep.
might be able to just talk to them and just figure out, your needs. But there's like I said, there's several companies out there that offer that type of service. You just got
Does
to
it
look for what's in your area.
Does it need to be someone that's local though, or can a lot of those conversations happen, online?
No, 100%. They can happen online. The initial conversations of, you know, what you want to run, how you want to run it, how long you want to run it, those kind of conversations can all be had remote from anywhere.
Good.
Absolutely.
All right. What is one small upgrade that our listeners today that they could make right now that would improve their RV power experience?
So I would say what we talked about, a battery monitor. If you don't currently have a effective battery monitor, not just one that displays your volts, okay, because that's not really telling you diddly squat really.
Mhm.
You need one that actually shows a percentage of your battery programmed to how many amp hours you have available, and it's a little device, or I don't know, I think like 80 to 120 bucks on the cheap end, upwards of like 250 for the really nice ones. So they're
Okay.
pretty affordable. It's a very simple install. It kind of just goes in line with your negative of your battery cable. So it's a very simple install, and it can change everything for you because now you know exactly how much power you're using, how much power you have
Yeah.
left, and you know when to, like I said, maybe run that generator just for 2 hours before you go to bed so you can make it through the night.
Yep. For sure. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We want to know a little bit more about you, Chris. So, for those of you who aren't familiar, Chris is with Why Not RV, like we mentioned earlier, and he actually has his own podcast. He's on YouTube. How did you get started with all of that? What made you decide to want to start your own podcast and do YouTube and everything?
Yeah, so I've been doing Why Not RV, the channel, since January of 2020.
Mhm.
Just a few months after I bought my first RV, which was like mid 2019.
Okay.
And I was like all people in the RV world, you get your first RV, you want to start to modify it, do stuff, and you go on YouTube.
Yep.
And I just wasn't finding the videos to be as educational as I would want them to be. There were several things like, all right, so we're going to go ahead and install this thing right here. And then bam, next shot, it's already installed. You're like, what? What happened?
How'd you get
You know?
there?
Yeah. So, and so I was in the Marines for 10 years, and part of my tour there, I was a martial arts instructor. I
Okay.
loved teaching. It's something that I just have a natural passion for, is teaching others in several subjects. And so I decided at that time, like, okay, there's not that great of videos out there. I'm already a very handy person, came from the HVAC trade, so I know electrical, I know plumbing, I know refrigeration. I'm just going to start making videos of what I'm doing to my RV and use that as an outlet for me to teach and be able to help other RVers just learn on their own, because there's just so much information out there that wasn't all the information that you needed. And so that's why I decided to start the channel back then, was because I wanted to teach people. I wanted to help other RVers do stuff on their own, because it can be expensive to do minor things in your RV,
Yep.
you know?
For
And
sure.
if you can research a little bit and do it yourself, like I can save you money. That's all my goal is with the channel, is to help other RVers. So and then I just started the podcast essentially a month and a half ago, and I just wanted to add it to my channel for some long form content, to talk a little bit deeper about certain topics that, like, I can show you a topic and talk about RV electrical, for example, like we're talking right now. But there's only so much I can show you, like during an install or during doing something. And that serves its own purpose, but maybe a conversation of, like we're having right now, of really like some basic questions that I might not think to ask because I already know the information. But a normal RVer would say, well, what is an amp hour? How does that even work? And then now we can talk more about it, and just again to give that longer form content to people. So that was the number one reason I started the podcast, was to try and get that additional information out there for those that wanted to absorb it. And then the other was to share RVers stories. So those are like kind of the two types of videos I'm going to be doing on my channel, is to share other RVers stories of how they got started RVing, where they're at now, and the journey along the way. Because your first RV is not going to be your last RV.
No, it won't.
And most people think it is. And they spend all this time and energy into making sure the first RV is the perfect RV. This is exactly what our family needs. And then you get in it and you realize it's not. So just get into something and get out there and get on the road.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Get into whatever the cheapest thing you can afford is, get out there, and then, buy something better the next time around, for sure.
Yeah.
So where can our viewers find you, and what are all of the things that you could potentially help them with?
Yeah. So you can find me, of course, number one on YouTube. Just type in Why Not RV. I pop right up. Facebook at Why Not RV. I also have a Facebook group called Why Not RV, and it's a smaller group, but it's mainly because there's so many groups out there that there's a lot of negativity in this world, and I don't care for it. So there's only two rules in the Why Not RV group: no bullying and no politics. So I don't care if you are 70 years old and this is your first time RVing and you don't know how to dump your tank. Ask the question, because if you don't know and then you make a mistake and now you got stuff all over your hands, just ask the question. No one on the group is going to give you any hassle. So that's why I created that group. And then on Instagram, Why Not RVFL is how you can find me on Instagram. So that's, and what was the second part of your question?
What are all the things that you could potentially help with our RVers with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do offer RV electrical consultation. So that's solar, batteries, inverters, all that type of stuff. If you have questions about it, you can reach out to me. We can talk minorly in email, and then if you want to use my consulting services, I can send you a rate sheet and we can talk FaceTime. Send me a picture, whatever it is that you need. I can help you with that. And then of course I do also offer full custom installs in regards to solar and inverters and building it off-grid rigs, generators, water heaters. I mean, I can do it all. It just depends on what you need and how much you're willing to spend, because at the end of the day, and I put this out there, I'm not the cheapest person out there. There is plenty of companies that will do it for cheaper. Go to them if you need to save the most money. But if you want like the most care and the quality, watch all my videos. You can see everything I've done, and everything I do, I try and just teach you. I try and just give you the information to do it yourself. But some people just aren't capable. They're not comfortable with electronics. They're not comfortable with high voltage, low voltage. And that's fine. That's what I'm here to be able to help you with.
Right. On that note, if they were to come to you for an installation, where in the country are you located, Chris?
So I'm located in Southwest Virginia, kind of in the greater Bristol, Tennessee, Bristol, Virginia area. So it's pretty easy. marker to find me. But yeah, I'm right in that area. So along the East Coast, from Tampa, Florida is 10 to 12 hours. DC 6 hours from me. New York City is, I think, 12 or 13 hours. So if you're along the East Coast, you can get to me.
Very good. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up today, Chris? Any final notes or words of wisdom for the viewers and listeners?
No, I'm good. I appreciate it. It was great chatting with you, Jen. I appreciate all the questions. I think this will help a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate having you with us today. To all you listeners, please be sure to like, subscribe, follow us, share a review, share with your friends, and tune in next week for our next episode of Learn to RV. Thanks again.
Help support the podcast by subscribing and telling a friend.